Toronto is lucky enough to not only border one of the Great Lakes, but also to have an 820-acre island park with several beaches, trails, an amusement park, and a regional airport. It's time to start maximizing these waterfront destinations, making them centerpieces of our great city. Today, there are 3 ferry routes shuttling people from Jack Layton Ferry Terminal to the 3 stops along Toronto Islands, but the ferries are reaching their end of life, meaning less reliable and infrequent service. Many have suggested a bridge connecting the island, but focusing on the bridge distracts from the need and opportunity to improve and expand service, especially with the need to replace the ferry fleet. There's no better time to transform water transit, which is why today we're continuing my series about how to improve Toronto's waterfront with a great transit network. Because not everyone can travel on their own boat, we're focusing on great water transit. Currently, there are 4 ferries operated by Parks, Forestry, and Recreation to and from the islands. Only having 4 high-capacity ferries means long wait times of 30 to 60 minutes, meaning most trips to the islands consist of standing in line in the hot sun for up to an hour. A few weeks ago, 2 of the ferries were out of commission for a weekend, leading to even longer waits and people being discouraged to come. Such a large park with nature, beaches, and activities for families should not be so difficult and unreliable to get to, which is why 2 new electric ferries are being ordered. While there's a possibility that the other 2 are replaced by a larger fleet of smaller vessels to serve more destinations with more frequent service, in the meantime, City Council has recently decided to explore renting out additional ferries to improve service until the new ones are operational. The new electric ferries being ordered seem to be almost identical to the current fleet, but future orders should consider modernizing the fleet. Instead of buying 2 or more large vessels that already look old, we should be ordering at least 4, but ideally 10 or more smaller single-deck vessels that can travel at higher max speeds closer to 20 knots. The current ferries tend to stay closer to 6 knots. Now, while newer ferries could go faster in theory, they would be restricted to the speed limits in the inner harbor of 5 or 10 knots depending on the proximity to land, so actual travel speeds wouldn't be increased very much, although 10 minutes from the island to the ferry terminal is a fairly quick trip. Where ordering a completely new fleet of ferries really helps us is the turnaround time at docks. By increasing the number of vessels, more destinations can be served and more frequently, reducing what is sometimes an hour-long wait into a mere 15 minutes at most. Smaller sizes will work just fine if the wait times are shorter and would make trips to places like the islands both easier and more possible for people. Extending the ferry to more destinations also makes a lot of sense. There are already places along the water which could easily accommodate ferry service using smaller vessels, such as the under-construction Villiers Island, soon to be home to over 100,000 people, and Ontario Place, which is currently undergoing a major revitalization to host a water park, music venue, science center, park space, and it has close proximity to an exhibition place, which in the summer times hosts the CNE. By using a larger fleet of smaller vessels, we could operate routes along the water more frequently to more major destinations, making the ferry a much more compelling option for riders. Smaller, more frequent vehicles is something being popularized in rail-based transit projects all the time now, but using smaller ferries is already being done by cities like New York, London, and Amsterdam. Speaking of which, we could add another ferry stop at Amsterdam Brewhouse, serving the Brewhouse, Queen's Harbor Food Hall, and Harbourfront Center. And why not add bike share TO to the islands? The popular bike rental system in the city could make it easier for people to cycle on the island without having to bring bikes on the ferry, something that would take up a lot of space on a smaller ferry and already crowds the bottom deck of the current fleet. Given that the ferry system already transports people back and forth, let's not forget that people live on the islands, and with an expanded network, it's a no-brainer to integrate the network with Presto by replacing the ticket system with a much simpler tap of a Presto card, which most people would already be using to get to the ferry stations anyways. So linking into this, many ferry systems are either operated by or integrated with the local transit system, so transferring operations back to the TTC would make a lot of sense, as the expanded ferry network would complement the existing buses and streetcars. Enhancing the ferry stops is another big improvement that should be made. With the larger number of vessels, the wait for a ferry could be anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes. So adding departure boards, displaying the next couple of ferries, as well as maps of the islands, the waterfront, the ferry network, and transit, adding some indoor seating for those rainy and windy days, bike share docks, and Presto machines would also be welcome additions, as well as a more organized queue to separate people waiting to board and people getting off the ferries. Back in 2015, there was also a design competition to renovate Jack Layton Ferry Terminal. Parts of the promenade outside of the terminal have been enhanced, but the terminal itself hasn't been funded for reconstruction and definitely isn't as nice as the striking design that's proposed. In 2019, an even larger terminal expansion was proposed by Waterfront Toronto in the city as a super pier with docking space for more ferries, cruise ships, navy ships, and other small ships. A super pier would be a great way to add more connectivity to the city and the waterfront, but it would also open up more opportunities for regional boat service, including the frequently proposed high-speed ferry services between Toronto and Niagara Falls. From Yonge and Queens Quay and Harbourfront Centre, water taxis provide another option for getting to the islands. The smaller, faster boats with much shorter wait times is a compelling option, albeit a little pricey. By adding more places along the waterfront for small boats to dock, water taxis could serve even more locations like the areas near George Brown College, the Distillery District, and Billy Bishop Airport. Every so often, the idea of building a bridge to connect the island with the mainland gets lots of attention, and that's been happening again in the wake of the recent incident where two ferries were out of service for a busy summer weekend. In theory, a bridge would add some reliability, but that depends on how it's built. Due to the large freight and cruise ships that use the Eastern Channel, the bridge would either need to be super tall or have a mechanism to move out of the way for big ships. A tall bridge would take up more space, be harder to use, and be more expensive, and a bridge with a mechanism would be more complex. We've already seen the Cherry Street Lift Bridge closed for the better part of the last couple months for repairs. But regardless, the bridge would end up being closed whenever a ship had to use the channel, meaning at times access to the islands would be gone. Meanwhile, with smaller frequent ferries, a route between Ward's Island and Villiers Island in the Portlands would connect almost the exact same places as a bridge while being less disruptive to other water vessels and complementing the rest of the ferry network. Also suggested recently was a gondola to the islands, which would admittedly be kind of cool, but similar to the bridge would have the issue of being out of the way of most major destinations if built between Ward's Island and the Portlands, and building a gondola between Center Island and Bay Street would be more direct, but would be quite long at roughly 2 kilometers and have to be tall enough for ships below while not getting in the flight path of the airport. So just like a bridge, building a gondola, while an interesting idea, is just too complicated compared to upgrading the ferry system. There's also a more realistic option similar to either a bridge or a gondola that should definitely be considered, although I think it needs to be done as an extra connection in addition to the ferries. Billy Bishop Airport is currently undergoing a new project to comply with the Runway End Safety Area Directive, which requires an extended area of compact ground past the runway and needs to be in place by 2027. As part of this undertaking, Ports Toronto is looking at 3 options known as RESA 1, RESA 2, and RESA 3. RESA 3 involves a landside road loop around the runway, which if chosen could mean either a public road or public path to the island. With an easy connection to the airport tunnel, RESA 3 would create a permanent walking and cycling option to get from the western side of the waterfront near Bathurst to the Toronto Islands near Hanlan's. Seeing as RESA is a project already being planned to be built in the next 3 years, it's a great opportunity to add another connection to the islands. Locals and tourists are naturally drawn to waterfronts, especially when they offer unique views, character, activities, and shops. To fully make Toronto's waterfront a destination for visitors, we need to use the water more to create the destination waterfront. With the Martin Goodman Trail, Watersedge Promenade, Villiers Island, Ontario Place, and the islands themselves, there's lots of parks and leisure activities bringing people to the water. However, adding more ways for people to enjoy the water itself would do a lot to attract visitors. Expanding the boat and kayak rentals along the waterfront at several locations, as well as the islands, would be an easy way to improve water activities and another form of leisure transit for visitors of the waterfront. At Harbourfront Centre, a new ferry stop, kayak rentals, and a highly used stage could serve as a hub for events and festivals on the waterfront. People could get dinner or check out an event at Harbourfront Centre, hop on a ferry, and be at Budweiser Stage at Ontario Place in less than 10 minutes with expanded ferry service. One of the waterfront's best-kept secrets is the Watersedge Promenade near the Yonge Street Slip. Hidden behind the condos on Queens Quay and a lack of signage, it's almost impossible to stumble upon. Even as I, someone who's explored the city for a decade, didn't know it existed until a couple months ago. The Waterfront BIA is trying to fix this by installing wayfinding posts at key locations along the waterfront, but an expansion of TO360, the city's wayfinding system, should be expanded on the waterfront, ideally with more modern digital displays and interactive maps, although admittedly that's a rather complex undertaking. Installing boat docks and floating patios would also make the Water's Edge Promenade much more vibrant and make an even stronger case for expanded water transit, with people quite literally being on the water for leisure, dining, and living. Waterfront Toronto has also been piloting a kiss and sail project this summer at the Yonge Street Slip, which lets people pick up and drop off friends and family from a boat, adding to more options for people to use the water. Imagine a day on the waterfront, taking a short ferry ride to the island, renting a kayak, and returning to the mainland, having dinner on a floating patio on the lake. Being able to enjoy and make the most out of Toronto's best features is something that could happen if we made some relatively small but meaningful changes to our city. Investing in the practical and widely used waterfront amenities will help to make Toronto a world-class destination.